This is the Big G Galaxy Alphawi, which is, a platform for our melanin-rich community. So if you are a melanin-rich person listening and tuned in right now, we welcome you. We celebrate the fact that you are tuned in to this wonderful, wonderful, fantastic, bombastic radio station. More love and more voodoo to you, family. So thank you so much for keeping it locked to the Big G Galaxy Alphawi, the only de-brainwashing station, here to wake up the nation. So if you're not already awakened, time to wake up, wake up, wake up. So first of all, I want to thank you so much, my brother, for joining us here on the Big G, Galaxy Alphawi. We welcome you. We appreciate you taking your time. But first of all, my brother, please introduce yourself to the Galaxy family. Tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are.
Yeah, my name is Ngila Michael Muendane. I live in Johannesburg. I was born here and grew up here. When I was 18 years old, I was sent to Robben Island, where I spent 7 years in imprisonment. And after release, I was sent to internal exile in South Africa. And 5 years thereafter, I left the country to join my liberation movement, which is PAC. And there I occupied various positions. I became their chief representative in the Middle East, based in Cairo. And then I proceeded thereafter to become the chief representative in Europe, based in London. And coming back from exile in 1992, I started a program that I had been researching since I was in prison, of changing mindsets of my people, because I realized that the imperialists won over us simply because of doing something to our minds, which I'm going to explain on this program today. And then I started working on how the mind works, just like they did, because that's where they started. It's not so much guns, which they use to keep us where we are. The guns were there to give us fright, to use fear, so that now we can listen to them, and then they worked on our minds. So I started with that program that I'd been researching, and I started applying it on radio for about 12 years. And between those times, I went into the communities, the youth, parents, because parents are central to our nation, or any nation for that matter. Parenting styles are very, very important. How you bring up your child is very important. So that's why I started parents, and then the youth and teachers, because the teachers also manage students, young people, and also taxi owners and taxi drivers and so forth. I mean, the whole community, all the profiles of the community. So, which means then that I've been doing life coaching, because it's all about life, how you manage your life. And then people try to use political approaches. Yes, they work, but we are not animals of politics, by the way. We are not political animals or political beings. Long before we become politicians or political beings, or rather operators, I must say, long before that, we are daughters and sons of someone. And being a daughter or a son, you belong to a family, and the family is the foundation of society. And unless you go to the foundation, you cannot change society that easily. It takes a long time to reach the critical mass, because you must reach the critical mass. So you'll be running in circles and thinking that politics is the way to go. And I'm speaking here as someone who has been involved in politics for 60 years, but I can tell you that if you're going to try to use politics to change society, you are going to be in conflict with one another within that society. But using social approaches, you find that you get quicker to the hearts of the people and to their minds, and you can effect transformation when you do that. And this has been proven by the strides that have been taking, because within those groups which I engaged, they remained after I left them amazing changes, amazing transformations. But the thing that I need is to reach the critical mass. You must reach a certain percentage of the population for you to realize change, where the program takes over all by itself and actually has its own life. You don't have to intervene anymore. So I've been doing this since 1992 to date. In fact, now I am changing from putting people under one roof and engaging them there to using digital approaches like the social media and stuff like that. I have got a website that I'm going to start using next week, where I'm going to engage people online, just as I'm engaging with you now. And in that way, I'll cover more people, a greater number of people than I have been able to do to date. So that is the summary, therefore, of my story. So I have been a liberation fighter since I was 13 years of age. But when I joined the PAC, which was in 1960, I actually became a political operator, and also I became a military operator as well, because we were fighting guerrilla warfare at that time before I went to jail. And even after leaving jail, I proceeded now on the military side of the struggle, where I was able, when I was in exile, to organize with other people, with the leadership of the PAC, because even in the Middle East, I had to send people to go and train in places like Lebanon, Egypt, and places like those. And also I was involved in the deployment of these people after they had been trained into the country, South Africa, where they did their fighting. So I've got that kind of orientation, therefore, in my mind. But now the major thing that I'm dedicating my life to is changing what I call the dependency mindset, or the dependency syndrome that we Black people, and I don't use Black, but I'll explain to you why I prefer to use African rather than Black. But we African people have been engineered, mentally engineered, to think in a certain way, to be dependent on Europeans for everything, material, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. All of the things that we use, all of the approaches that we use in managing our lives comes from Europe. In South Africa, you will hear people talking about white wedding and traditional wedding. They do both, whereas white people don't do that. They just have their own wedding. So in every way, therefore, we depend on them. And the dependency is just like being a child, where you depend on your parents for whatever you need. And because you depend on them, you honor them. And so that is why you find that in everything we do, most of us represent the kitchen Negro, for instance. So we just have no independence, even if we think we have, because we've got degrees. We forget that even the education that we receive is an education which is structured in such a way that you are trained or educated not to think, but you are educated in order that you should serve the interests of Europe and the imperialists who came from Europe and the colonialists who came from Europe. And when colonialism ended, it transformed itself into neocolonialism, where the system that was created by the imperialists is now no longer run directly by Europeans, but it is actually run by our own people who don't even realize what they are doing. They unwittingly run a system that oppresses their own people. They still continue with the type of education that they received, or we all received from colonialism, and they continue with the legal system that we inherited from colonialism. So, for instance, in South Africa here, we still use the Roman Dutch law. Now there are no Romans anymore, and the Dutch are no longer called Dutch. They are now Hollanders or Nederlanders, but we still continue with the system that they imposed on us, and we don't even realize. Lawyers become proud that they are advocates. Lawyers become proud that they may be judges and stuff like that. But what we don't realize is that we are perpetuating a system that was designed to oppress us, Shanice. So I've introduced myself, that
Brilliant.
who I am, where I come from, and what I do, and why I do the things that I do presently.
Thank
so
you.
my mission, therefore, is to liberate the African person. And the African person are those people who are indigenous of Africa, historically and even currently. So any person who has got a lineage that comes from Africa, or anybody that has got a descendants of Africa is an African, and that is my concern. The unity of these people, so they stand together to regain the things that were taken away from them, including land, and also regain their dignity.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, my brother. And, I'm sure all of our listeners listening will hear that, your entire life has been devoted towards liberating us as a people, physically and now mentally. We often talk here on the Big G about how we were enslaved and shackled, and, how we had chains around our hands and our foot. But now that those chains have been removed, we're still continuing to fight the mental enslavement, because now our minds have been enshackled, and it must be just so painful, for someone, like yourself. You're from that generation of the brave, courageous freedom fighters who fought to free Africa from the clutches of those colonizers, and did an amazing job and managed to, chase them out the front door, only then to find that they came back in round the back door, so to speak, and have continued to control and to manipulate us as Africans, and to the extent now where they're using the education system to control the minds of us as Africans, so that they can continue to reign, in our countries, and through us, that they manage to use our people, us, as the puppets and the ones who are maintaining the status quo. I can just feel the pain, because I'm sure you would have lost a lot of great comrades, a lot of great soldiers would have fallen, in this fight to rid South Africa and the continent of the colonizers, and then to still see them there till this day. Wow. How does that feel, my brother? To still see them there till this day. Wow. How does that feel, my brother?
Well, it is mixed feelings. First and foremost, it is the agony that I experience. And the agony for me is controlled anger. Mm-hmm. That I experienced as a young boy. When I was 13, I had to start working for my own books at school. When white children simply go out of the kitchen into the garage and into the mother's car and to school, I had to work for a white woman, in the kitchen and in the garden. But it's all very well to complain about these things, Shanice. Mm-hmm. And it is useful to complain about them. It is useful to reflect upon them. But to focus on our complaints and talk about how we are oppressed, how we've been degraded, and how we're being marginalized, and how we're exploited, and how our dignity has been taken away from us, how we have been made the wretched of the earth. Yeah, it's fine, but that alone cannot liberate us. Mm-hmm. It is just a rehash of the memories that we have.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes, my brother, I hear you on that. But, there are still some of us who don't believe.
Let me complete the thought. Mm-hmm. Let me complete the thought, please.
Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
When we do that, Sister Shanice, and then complain about these things, as I said, it is correct to do that, but we should not focus only on them. We should talk about solutions. We must reflect on our agony, reflect on our situation and the circumstances that we're facing, but with a view to finding solutions that are appropriate or that are linked to that problem that we are describing. Because this problem was created. These people sat down, they took our land first, and then sat down to reflect, plan, and design, and implement and test the machinations that they are now using still to keep us in that position. How did it start? In Europe, when you read the history of Europe, you find that the Europeans were taking each other's lands, capturing and seizing each other's lands. But later on, they realized that no sooner do they take the land away from its owners than the owners of the land, the original owners of the land, come back and fight for it. So the question that they asked, therefore, after they had captured our territories, was, what are we going to do if these people do the same thing as ourselves have been doing amongst one another? What if they come back and say, we reclaim our land because we can remember that it belongs to us? That was a good question. Mm-hmm. So they had to sit down. They said, look here, everything that a person does starts in the mind. Mm-hmm. Anything. Even I'm going to eat, you say to your mind. And then you go on eating. I'm going to build a bridge. And so forth. Everything starts with the mind. So let us look into the mind and change their mindset. Specifically, Lord Macaulay delivered a speech in London in Parliament there, in the British Parliament, where he said that the African people are very spiritual. The African people are interdependent. They work on the spirit of interdependence, And in Africa, you never find prisons, you never find beggars. And such people with such a spirit are very difficult to suppress. So because of that spirit, they will continue fighting and they will win over. And we as Europeans shall have lost everything that we have gained from them. So they said, okay, how do we do it? They collected, they were not psychologists at that time, but they were anthropologists. They got hold of their anthropologists, got hold of the historians, got hold of their philosophers and their missionaries. They put them together while they were talking there in Berlin, because they set up a special conference for this, and many people know, but people only know that that conference was used to demarcate Africa into pieces. Yes, that was it. But there was something else taking place in the workshop in Berlin in 1884 to 1885. And that was a workshop. The workshop that was engineering the African mind. They first started with how the mind works. And they realized that this is how the mind works. I'll explain it just now. So what they did, therefore, they said throughout the conference, we are the only nation or the only race in the world or even in history where people actually sat down to workshop themselves on our minds. And we wonder why we continue to behave this way. It is because of that workshop that took place in 1884, 1885. And I'm not saying that colonialism started in 1885. All I'm saying is that this was a consolidation of colonialism. This was a consolidation of imperialism, in fact, because colonialism is a child of imperialism. And so imperialism has always been there. They started, invading our countries all over the world, and even Africa was affected in its own special way. So it was that workshop was to consolidate all of this, because they feared that we might come back and claim the land back as we are doing now, but not in a very, very effective way, because we still need a very, very strong, independent, self-reliant mindset to complete the job, which they killed. They killed our self-reliance. They killed our independence. We had to depend on them. So they identified areas in life where this strategy or approach could be used. They identified education. They identified religion, or Christianity in their case, as if Christianity started in what you call in Europe. We'll deal with that later. And they identified the media. They identified childbearing and child rearing. And they identified all those areas which are strategic in any society. And that is where now they changed the configuration that we had into a different one, where instead of being independent, we had to be what you call depend on them. As I said, this idea started with Lord Macaulay, who spoke at the British Parliament and said, we are very, very strong, and we have got fortitude, and we're very resilient, and we cannot be put down easily. And then he said, what we should do as Europeans, he said, when he was talking to the British there, is to present our values to them, force them to accept our values, force them to regard our European values as superior to African values. And once they become conditioned to that, then we have them. Because we are creatures of conditioning as human beings. A human being is a creature of conditions, of conditioning. That also means we are creatures of habit. What we do consistently, we do consistently because of habits. Only a habit can be consistent. And that is why even language itself is a habit. Because we repeat it all the time, we talk all the time. Walking is a habit. So everything that we do on a consistent basis, we do it on a consistent basis because we are creatures of habit. So conditioning, therefore, is that aspect of habit that puts you in a certain condition, and which condition is perpetuated, over time until you become that. So our belief system, therefore, was conditioned. It was first changed where we're forced under pressure, using fear, to do certain things, to address them in a certain way, and to adopt certain behaviors and stuff like that. And once that was in place, the mind does not know that you are being forced to do it. All the mind does is that it sees you repeating a certain action or a certain conduct or a certain repertoire, and then it adopts it as a habit. And once it has become a habit, you don't know anymore. You are in that room called conditioning with the four walls, in that conditioning room, which means beyond the wall, you can't see anything. Beyond the four walls, you can't see anything. You only see what is within the room of conditioning. I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
Absolutely clear, my brother. You're making yourself absolutely clear.
Yeah. So then.
Do continue. Oops, he must have another call coming through. Oh no, it's saying reconnecting. So as you can hear, family, our brother is absolutely on the same page as us, and he has written a book called I Am an African. So do look out for that book. Hopefully our brother can reconnect with us quite soon. So that we can continue with the discussion. Okay, he's hanged up, and I'm sure he'll be calling back very, very soon. Wow. So if you're just tuning in, you're locked in to Sister Shanice on the Big G, Galaxy Afiwi, the only de-brainwashing station. We're speaking to our brother, Ngila Michael Muende, and as you can hear, this man has been a liberation fighter from the age of 13. He's fought in the guerrilla warfares in South Africa. He was involved in a military level, and now he's turned his liberation fight from physical military activity now to the psychological warfare that's been waged against us as a people. Our brother is now back. Welcome, Black, my brother, Ngila. Please continue.
Yeah, can you repeat what Sifiso said? I think it's very important.
Oh, I was just recapping very, very briefly during the 1 minute that you were off. I was just letting anyone calling in know that we are speaking to yourself, who was a liberation fighter and has been since the age of 13, and now after having fought militarily in the war against apartheid, etc., you are now fighting the war, the psychological warfare that has been waged against us as a people. Yeah,
and that is very important. When we embarked on the liberation struggle in the form of military warfare or guerrilla warfare, it was because of our mindset, the anger that I spoke about, which I define as agony. So that now we had been conditioned to that suffering, and we wanted a solution out of that. And if we did not have the right mindset for a military offensive, we would never have been able to embark on it. And now we have got to embark on development. We have got to embark on liberation. We have to embark on building Africa and building Africans wherever they are. We have got to embark on the constructive and creative offensives that we've got to embark on. And without the right mindset, we cannot continue and do those things that we have got to do, because those needs to be fulfilled need us to be creative. And you cannot be creative unless you've got an independent thinking mind, because creative comes from some creation, and creation means that you bring about new things that were not there before, and nobody can do that unless they've got an independent mind. That is where we must go. That is why the fight, the mental or intellectual offensive, has meaning. Look at Africa. Let's look at Africa today. Africa is still backwards. Let us accept it. Our leaders in Africa are still owned by the Europeans. I mean, look how they invite them at short notice, and they all congregate there in no time at all. Last week, African leaders went to France being called by a small boy called Macron, but they responded. But I, as a citizen, if I had to say I want to see my president, if it happens, it will happen after 10 years, but it never happens. But Macron simply has to raise his finger, and our leaders are there because we honor. We are possessed, we are owned, our minds are owned by the Europeans. And look at how they treat their own people. Go to Chad, go to Cameroon, revisit Rwanda in 1994. What was happening there? A Frenchman was instigating the locals against one another, one tribe against, and tribes who had been living together for centuries. 240,000 years they've been living together. But now it takes a white person from Europe to instigate them against each other. This is where we are. Go to any African country, you will find that African country has got dependent links with a European country. It's either France, Britain, Germany, and even Spain, for goodness sake. So that is what we are facing now. But we can get a new leadership in a short space of time by changing the mindset, not fighting, because not physically fighting anymore, because this is the war of the mind. So we've got to use the same method, because we also understand how the mind works. We give people proper education from when they're little.
Just to let you know, I've got callers already calling in who want to interact with you. I'm holding them on Skype. Let me allow my brothers on the line to just welcome you and greet you. We've got Brother Jeff on the line who called in first. Brother Jeff, are you still there?
Sister, greetings, sister from London. I'm greeting Brother Muende, I believe his name is. Brother
Yes.
Muende, is that correct?
Muendane.
Oh, Muendane.
It's one of those. African musical names, Muendane.
Love it. Oh. And we've got Brother Rasso Shing on the line, wanting to greet you.
Hello,
Blessed
Brother
greetings,
Chima.
my brother, greetings, my brother. Blessings to you.
Strength, my brother. Thank you.
And Brother Rasso Shing is calling in from Jamaica. He's an African in Jamaica. Okay, so my brother, they've been listening to your presentation, and they're obviously calling in because maybe they've got a question or some comments. Are you ready for us to bring in, to open up the lines now for interaction? Muende?
Are you asking me?
Yes,
Are you
yes.
asking me?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
yes, oh, certainly.
Yeah, okay,
Certainly.
fantastic. Brother Jeff, go ahead. The floor is yours. Welcome.
That's a Brother Shing, greetings to you, Brother Russell Shing, greetings to you, sir. Brother Muendane, sorry.
Muendane. Don't worry, Muendane. No, we'll get you.
Ngila
I'll get it.
Muendane. Muendane.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
well,
there.
brother, yeah, thank you. Yeah, brother, thank you for your service. You heard your details of your life back in the African homeland. For myself, I'd say my passionate endorsement to your activity in the past. Your wonderful service to Africa, because you fought for us on our land against the invaders, and we salute you and we honour you, because people like you are a minority. My question to you, brother, is this: how can we accelerate people like yourselves to become the majority? Because right now, the reason why the Chinese, the corporations are called resource raping. I'm Africa. Resource raping Africa, because by misleaders allowing it, the resource rape, because they have not got our interests at heart. How can we reverse that situation? How can we get people like you to be the majority? I mean, because right now, a situation in Africa happens slowly. You see on YouTube, you see people, the Chinese being deported, but that's very minuscule. That's a very the activity is happening on a wide scale. How can we make some Africans like yourselves are the majority? How can we reverse the current trend of Africans allowing ourselves to be resource raped? How can we get Africans like you to be the majority? That's my question to you. I'll speak long-winded, but you get my point.
Yeah, I get your point. Loud and clear. Yeah, that I am doing already, my brother Jeff. And I've got a program here, and I'm sure as time goes on, I'll get people from around the world and train them on it, because I worked on it for close to 55 years. And it started when I was in prison, and it started with a question that I raised as to why is it that psychology says to us we are shaped by our environment, yet we as prisoners on Robben Island shared the same environment. However, some of us were very, very strong, towers of strength. You could lean on them, physically and intellectually and emotionally and spiritually. Yet there were some of us in the same environment who were very, very weak, looked weak, docile, and looked at things with trepidation all the time. And I said, but then you see, there must be something that makes us different. And I started studying it, looking for it, and I found it. And when I found it, that was the foundation of the program that I have, which I call Soul Talk. I found, I worked on it, and when I left prison, I went to England. I met with many, many people there who were into things like those of the mind, and I developed this. It addresses the individual, but basically, to cut a long story short, what you need is to educate people, because they also instilled this mindset that we have right now by quote unquote educating us, miseducating us. They gave us wrong information about us. They destroyed everything, like for instance in Mali there, the university and in Benin and in many other places, even here in South Africa, which show that we are clever people as well. They destroyed that and gave us a picture of ourselves. They generated or instilled a self-image in us of people who are docile, as people who are not intelligent, and as people who are not creative, and we believed it.
Right.
So we must reverse that belief.
Absolutely. Let's bring in another caller, Brother Rasso Shing. We've also been joined by 763, and we did have Brother Ade, but we've lost him. So let's bring in Brother Rasso Shing.
Blessed greetings, Empress Shanice. And that's what we always say before we utter any word. In the presence of the Supreme, the omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, the great order of divinity, blessing to our family across Mother Earth. My beloved brother, you see, if a child is raised by dogs, that child will behave like the dogs. And what we need to understand is that it wasn't one nation that has kept us in bondage. In the last 500 years, all the Europeans who call themselves French, English, German, they all came together. But what we keep on forgetting, my brother, is that our people have been brought into hell over 8,000 years ago. And every conquerors that came in, whether they're Roman, whether they were the Greek, they didn't disappear. All they did was to change the name. That is why everyone that came in destroyed our libraries. They burned everything and created their new version. And that is why, so when we keep on thinking that is the white man that has kept us down for so long, no, it has been there for over 8,000 years. When we then have the Ishmaelites and the Israelites, and out of those two revelation came Islam and what came Christian. And those two has been holding us down under religion. That is why His Majesty said to us, religion were rules and regulations made up by men, and to bring them to a more reality of the divine order of creation. But our spirituality is what defines us. And the only liver we must understand, my brother, that we had heaven, and it was them who created hell, so we've been in hell. That's where we've been. And when you're in hell, they changed everything. And it's only now that we're realizing that wherever we are as so-called the dark-skinned nation, we are suffering the same consequences, the same indignation, whether you're in Sudan, whether you're in Israel, whether you're in Egypt, we continue to suffer, my brother. And we know there's only one solution, our own spirituality that defines the great creator of our forefathers, right? And that is what it is. So what we're dealing with is a spiritual connection that will now create the governmental movement that is now necessary, because we speak of theocratical elected leaders. These are divine within them.
Rise up, Brother Rasso Shing.
We're now coming together, my brother.
Let's allow our brother to respond.
What comes out of the intervention that our brother has made now is spot on. And it says spirituality is what you call is primary or overarching. That is true, because our struggle must be a multifrontal. By multifrontal, I mean it must be physical, as I was involved in. It must be intellectual or must be mental. It must also be emotional, the agony that I spoke about, and it must be spiritual. But you see, the physical is about the body, how the body is liberated to do its own thing. But the body cannot work without the mind. That's what those guys realized. And the mind cannot work without its power, the electricity, if I may use what you call an analogy here. The energy that comes from the spirit, because only the spirit carries energy. So in that sense, therefore, our spirituality or the spirit controls the other three dimensions of a human being. So we must, therefore, in addressing the spiritual, also see how it manifests in the body, how it manifests in the mind. And once we take that approach, our liberation will be faster. And it must start with two things. The child, and if the child is already grown up, like I'm grown up now, we start with the individual. Change the individual, how he thinks. And by changing how he thinks, you are changing the mindset, the conditioning. And that conditioning must be transformed into consciousness. Because once you are conscious, then you are conscious of what is happening to you, who you are, what is your identity. And if you know your identity, then you also know who you identify with. So you can work with those people in concert to liberate yourselves as a people. So it starts with the individual. It starts with the child. You cannot just start with a group. You must see to it that the individual is liberated and has liberated himself or herself and is taking responsibility for his or her thoughts, for his or her words, for his or her actions, for his or her behavior, and for their character. So these strong characters, therefore, that they take responsibility for their lives, come together, and they are no longer sparks. They are now a fireball. Mm-hmm. Because one spark cannot achieve anything alone. It must be combined with other sparks and form a fireball to be able to be effective.
Rise up, my brother. For that, we don't just need sparks, we need fireballs indeed, intellectual fireballs and whole populations that are in their right mind. And you said it starts with the individual. I'm going to bring another couple of callers in just a very, very short while. I've got Brother Kwame, Brother Geb and Brother Ade lined up. We're going to bring them in just a short while. I just want to respond very briefly to what has been said, because my brother, we've only recently met, but the platform that we're on is Galaxy Afiwi. We say the only de-brainwashing station. We have been in the business of trying to de-brainwash the minds of our people for the past 30 plus years, 34 years. And you could say it's happening on an individual level as people find us and they tune in, and through the whole series of educational programs that we bring, they're getting, to realize the extent to which that we have been brainwashed and our minds whitewashed, and the extent to which we're out of our right minds, and the works that needs to be done, to grow that level of self-consciousness in terms of our identity. And for us, as you can appreciate, love it, it was an equally as challenging battle to do that, because we weren't even on our right homeland. We're in Europe, but we're Africans who have been conditioned to think that like we're Europeans, behave like Europeans, etc. And it was over time, through the connections with our brothers and sisters on the continent, that we realized that our brothers and sisters on the continent was also receiving the same miseducation, and there was the same confusion about identity, and we found that our brothers wanted to be more French than a Frenchman if they were colonized by the French, if they were colonized by the British, they wanted to be more British than the British, if they're colonized by the Spanish or the Portuguese, etc. So we realize the extent of the, the confusion. So we're all clearly suffering from the same psychological damage that, you have pointed out. Those groups of Europeans got around the table and orchestrated, through their scientists, etc. And so you said that we've got to do it at an individual level, but whilst we're working at the individual level, my brother, the education system, which the Europeans have set up right across Africa and everywhere in Europe where we all are, that we are all clamoring to get into, to get their certificates so that we can, qualify to serve them and qualify to provide them with goods and services, qualifying us to maintain the status quo whilst we're going through those that educational system in our millions on a daily basis, and whilst that brainwashing is being applied to us in our millions on a daily basis through the education, through the media, through the magazines and all of the other powerful instruments that they possess. We're trying to do it on an individual level. How are we going to get that fireball impact that is desperately needed? Because we're talking about reaching our brothers from here in Europe right over to where you are, across the entire continent of Africa, from North to South Africa, to Brazil, the Caribbean. Their educational institutions are everywhere, indoctrinating our people with that whiteness. So before I go back to the lines, let me just ask you for a brief response to what I've said, my brother, please.
Yes, you are talking about your situation in Europe there, where our children in Europe, African children, go to the European schools. Mm-hmm. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But here in South Africa, mm-hmm. we actually surrender mm-hmm. our children to whites mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. with white values, European style values. We actually surrender them. We take pride in them.
Just to qualify and say it's the same here, my brother. We are surrendering our children to their schools as well. We've got a few Saturday schools, but the vast majority of our people don't support those independent Saturday schools. They prefer to surrender their children to the mainstream schools that is whitewashing the minds of our children. Because it goes back to what you were saying, we have been led to believe, that we never accomplished anything. We are less than. They found us, swinging from trees in the jungle somewhere, and they're our saviors, and they need to save us. That mind, they have totally eroded our culture, our knowledge of our history, and our knowledge of ourselves. And so we are all surrendering our children, well, the vast majority of us are surrendering our children into their schools to get what most of our people believe to be, a civilized education.
Brother Jeff said it. He said, if you give your children to dogs mm-hmm. to bring your children up, they'll behave like dogs.
Yeah, they'll come back barking. Yeah. Leave it there. Let me go back to the phone line.
And I hope mm-hmm. there are South African listeners on your show today, so we can share this information mm-hmm. because our unity can only come about when we use techniques that are inspired by a spirit or a system of shared values. So, and those individuals that I'm talking about, those sparks that I'm talking about, can only come together through a spirit or a system of shared values. And then we can start discussing without conflict among us. Right now, we are so conflicted among each other, because one comes with a French view, another one comes with a Boer view, another one comes with an English view, and things like those. And in that way, instead of focusing on the problem that confronts us, we are focusing on our cleverness and scoring points and our egos and stuff like that, because it's an ego thing that I have got a degree from Oxford. It's an ego thing to say I've got a degree from that. But we don't have African universities. Nowhere in Africa do we have universities that are based on African systems of knowledge.
I think they're springing up.
We must look into those things.
I think there are small sparks around, like the Kwame Nkrumah Ideological Institute of Learning. There's some small sparks, my brother, but
yes,
not on the scale.
I realize that, but after 50 years, we should have had more. Every country should have had a university that is deliberately based on African knowledge systems.
Absolutely agree with you, my brother. Let me go to the line. Kwame, please take yourself off mute. We're coming to you, and then we're going to go over to Brother Geb. Rise up, Brother Kwame. Welcome to the Big G, a Galaxy Afiwi.
Welcome. Not welcome. Greetings, my sister, and greetings to all the Galaxy family, including the listeners and your guest from Azania.
Thank you.
Now, hello, Kwame, my son. You know, my son's name is Kwame.
Hey.
I named him after Kwame Nkrumah.
Oh, beautiful. Yes.
Okay, my son. Go on. Let us hear what you have got to say.
So, first things first. Azania, so-called South Africa, along with all the other 54 African countries, are not free. And they are not countries. We need to understand that they are colonies. Of the former oppressor, okay? And that in order to regain our minds, or should I say, sorry, in terms of Azania was never free. You know, the whole Mandela thing was a fraud. It was a charade, because no man comes out of prison after 27 years and becomes president if there's not a carefully scripted script behind it, And what Nelson Mandela did was treacherous to our people in Azania. By abandoning the Freedom Charter, he allowed Caucasian white interests to infiltrate the whole of Azania to forsake for his own personal glory, but more importantly, at the expense of the improvement of the quality of life for the masses of our people in Azania. Nothing in Azania has changed. Nelson Mandela was a puppet. It was a setup. The whole Mandela thing was a setup that we fought for, hook, line, and sinker. South Africa today, or what is called South Africa today, because South Africa, the name South Africa was given to that land by that demon Cecil Rhodes, who was a shareholder of the Queen Victoria Company, which is part of the Royal Africa Company, which today belongs to Queen Elizabeth I, whose ancestor is in the throne today, Queen Elizabeth II. So we need to understand how this whole thing is put together. Okay? So what is called South Africa has never been free. This myth of apartheid is a myth itself. Apartheid is still there because 90% of the land in Azania is still in white hands. Is that freedom? Is that what the freedom struggle was about? Again, the mercantile corporation that governs South Africa is still in white hands. So the companies like Castle Brewery, MTN, DSTV, ShopRite, Gay, all these South African companies in all of the continent, particularly in Ghana and Nigeria, these are owned in the main by white Anglo-Saxon Boer people with puppet African shareholders to give you the impression that these are African companies. No, they are white mercantile companies. Yeah, the whole stock market in Azania is controlled by the Afrikaner Brotherhood, who are the secret society that control particularly the economic and hitherto the land and resources of Azania. So our people in South Africa need to understand that you've never been free. Apartheid was never lifted because apartheid is still rife, right? And that your so-called leader, Nelson Mandela, sold you out. He was a puppet, he was a stooge, and this whole Mandela thing was a fraud. Now, in order to find the solution, we need to get rid of all the religion in South Africa. South Africa has got all the religions in Africa, in that country. Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, right? That is crowding our people's minds. You aim to get rid of all that religion, make it more African-centered religion. 2, South Africa. The country is called South Africa. Just like all the other African countries, needs to ditch away that European system of education and come up with an African system of Africation, as Prophet Quaker calls it, Africation. That can Africate the inner mind of the African person. Because if we don't Africanize our system of education, which in turn Africanizes the mind of our people, then we're just playing games. We are playing games. Because this European system of education has educated us to be against ourselves. So like the professor, what's his name? Doctor or Professor Howard Nicholas said, Professor of Economics at Rotterdam, he said that everything that we teach black people, everything from economics to military to education, everything that we teach African is designed to bring Africa down and to keep it in the subordinate position it is in. So when you understand that, we need to then form a paradigm of Africanization where we Africate the mind from birth. And then that is reinforced in the African-centered learning education system. That is reinforced in the African higher center of education. And that is reinforced in the systems of governance that we have. But again, the systems of governance that we have across the African continent is not an African-centered governance system. It is the colonial. It is the continuation of the colonial system of governance that is for their benefit, not for our benefit. I'm just going to wrap up by saying that Tanzania was never free. You are not free, just like all the other countries in Africa. You are a colony of the South Africa Company that is owned by the Queen of England. But more importantly, you need to scrap wholesale the system of education that you have at the moment, because that system of education is designed to make you a slave, not a free person. Give thanks.
Give thanks, Brother Kwame. Rise up every time. Let's go back to our guest for a response to the points that you have made.
All the points that Kwame raised are valid and true. And these are the things that we've got to focus on or look at. But our orientation is primary. We must have an orientation, and we cannot just get rid of the systems that are there unless we have got self-knowledge as African people, which means every individual must have the self-knowledge like Kwame has, like I have, like you, my little sister, have. So once we have a sense of identity and we know what our identity is, then we will also know who we identify with. And once we realize who we identify with, these individualities that I'm talking about as sparks will then come together to constitute the ball of fire. You see? So this is how we must think now. This is a paradigm that we must use in thinking. In that way, we will not only know our problems, our challenges, but we'll also know that we need to talk and focus upon solutions. And in that way, the solutions will manifest into the life that we all deserve as African people. And it is not only South Africa that is not free. There is no country, maybe Ethiopia is, but, or let me say the majority of countries in Africa are not free. They are under neocolonialist governments. We must realize what is the big picture. The big picture is imperialism, where Europe is the emperor of the world, and in this case of Africa. So that is imperialism. But imperialism uses colonialism, where they bring in their ilk to come and manage us and give us education that is not appropriate for the growth of a human being. So that is colonialism. But colonialism translates itself into neocolonialism. So all the countries in Africa right now, and I'm not saying the majority now, I'm saying all the countries in Africa are under neocolonial governments, neocolonial rule. We are being ruled directly from Europe through our own people. Even on this question of COVID-19, you find that we take our instructions from Europe. There's a case now going on in South Africa where people are challenging the government to show them the virus. Where is the pure virus, the complete virus? And they have gone to court for that. And the courts, which are using Roman Dutch law, unwittingly throw out. Let me put it that way. I'm just
unwittingly or deliberately.
English is not my language. You know,
okay.
you must speak to me in Zulu and Shang next time. Okay.
Oh, sorry. I better do some fast learning.
Yeah, anyway, that is what is happening. So Kwame is right.
So they threw out the challenge, my brother. Their courts threw out the challenge. Their courts threw out the challenge.
Yeah, they threw it out. And I don't blame the judge, because the judge himself comes from what I come from too, being indoctrinated in the direction of European values.
Yeah, so they were. So he was probably taking his.
Therefore, that it is imperialism which brought about colonialism, and colonialism which brought about neocolonialism, and the kind of dispensations we have in every country. The country that is trying its best is Rwanda right now.
Yes, and look what happened to our dear brother from Zimbabwe, Magufuli, when he decided that he was going to liberate Tanzania. Oh, sorry, what did I say? Yeah, Tanzania.
Yeah.
Tanzania. This is the challenge that we're up against, my brother, when we do have, because he challenged...
And I believe he was killed.
Of course he was.
We must face...
He was murdered. He was assassinated.
Yeah.
Let me bring in Brother Geb.
And the English way and say, no, that's indecent language. No. If a person was killed, he was killed. We may not have the nitty-gritty. We might not have the minutiae, the small little details. But we have been around for a long time.
Yes.
I've been around.
And our spirit speaks to us. We are spiritual beings. We know.
I have seen Lumumba killed, Kwame Nkrumah killed, and I know how
they do it.
We know.
Yes.
We don't need any nitty-gritty.
Yes, my brother. Let's bring in another caller, Brother Geb. Rise up, Brother Geb. Welcome to the Big G.
Hotep, sister.
Hotep.
And Hotep to all the guests. Sis, you always have a wonderful show, and I appreciate today's show especially.
Thank you so
as
much.
I was listening to not just your guests, but everybody else, especially Brother Kwame. Marcus Garvey said that our strongest weapon is our mind.
Yes.
And so because this conversation is really about the mind and how we liberate ourselves. And we can see and look around the world to see, are we liberated? And the answer is no, collectively no. So we have individuals that are liberated to a degree. But are we really liberated? Because I've been Africated, I've Africated myself, but I'm still sending my child to a European school because that's all we have. So the damage is perpetuated because we're not truly liberated. So even the strongest individuals, like when I heard brother talk about Nelson Mandela, when he came out, he still had to deal with a Eurocentric system. So, and so for us that are liberated, we are still sending our children to a European system of training. And, as you know, I'm a psychotherapist, but my undergraduate degree is in computer science. And there's a saying, input in, input out, or garbage in, garbage out. And so the only time that we are going to see a new African is when we educate and Africate that African as to who he is. That is the only time we're going to see a new breed of African man, woman, and children is by the information that we're giving that man, woman, and children. And the educational system is designed, I don't care if you do a law degree, I don't care if you do a computer science degree, a social science degree, or a history degree. In their system, it is all undergirded by their systems of indoctrination. And so if we want to see a new African, it must be in our system training. And I'm just going to land on that, sis.
Powerful contribution as always, Brother Geb. Wow. Let's go over to our guest. The only time we're going to see a new African is when we are the ones educating ourselves. And, our brothers just reminded us that we are all on I think Neely Fuller said it's like we're in a prison camp. And the prison wardens are taking care of all of our needs, and we think we're free, we're not. We're just on one big prison camp, and we have nowhere to go but to send our children to their schools. And so we do that. Is that really the case? Or do some of us have to make the decision to homeschool, to organize ourselves so that we are homeschooling, so that we're utilizing our Saturday schools? Because I think we're all on the same page here on the Big G that the only time we're going to see a new African, as our brother said, is when we educate ourselves. How do we get there? Solutions.
Yes, you have rounded it up perfectly. The brother there mentioned different subjects that are being taught in a European way. I might just add the mathematics as well.
Yeah.
Because the way we're taught mathematics, mathematics can be used on any subject, on any human endeavor, by the way, whether it is agriculture, whether it is medicine or whatever. But the way that we are being taught here to use mathematics is to use it in a Eurocentric way. We are not shown how we can use it to perpetuate or advance the African cause. Now, in my book that actually triggered this discussion, I Am an African, and subtitled Embrace Your Identity and Escape Victimization. I mentioned all these things that Brother Kwame, he's not my brother, actually he's my son, and in a real way, in a real sense, added to that, he's got my son's name. Everything that he said there are covered in the book. There's something that I add in the book. Towards the end of the book, I actually spell out the method that you can call a solution. I'm not saying it is the ultimate, but at least it presents a solution, and that solution is about the mind. How to change the mind, and in that way change the mindset, and changing the mindset changing the orientation and the paradigms that people use in their thinking. That's very, very important. It is not just articulating and regurgitating what we learned at university. No, it is actually being mindful of the words that you use, how you use those words, how you use the phrases, how you render the narrative. But most of us don't even do that. And here, for instance, you find when a person has a problem with their phone, and the phone or cell phone is playing up. You know what they say? They say, oh, these things of whites, as if cell phones are made or have been initiated by white people, as if technology belongs to Europe and we don't have any capability. And there's a saying here that many people still use in South Africa and in Zimbabwe and also in Zambia, that the white man or the white person is supreme. Says in Zulu. It means the white man is supreme. So we still have in our mindset that kind of thing, and you find that a crowd meets in a meeting or to discuss issues. And they will start in Zulu or they will start in Sesotho, but once a white person comes into that meeting, everybody changes and they speak in English for his benefit. Can you see? Yeah. We submit to white people. And this is because most of us are Christians and we believe in Christ, Jesus Christ. And you love Jesus Christ. And you must have a picture of the person that you love. And what picture have they given us deliberately? They've given us a picture of a Caucasian. And which means that once you meet with a Caucasian, your respect for Jesus is transferred from Jesus into that Caucasian.
That's right.
You associate the Caucasian with Jesus Christ and you honor him. You fear him, you love him.
We agree with you on that, my brother.
These are the things I'm talking about. These are the things that I talk about in my book, I Am an African. It is not just to say I'm an African. That identity just is very, very crucial. When we must be mindful of it. What is an African? And what is an Africanist? An Africanist is an African that does things the African way. And what is a Pan-Africanist? A Pan-Africanist is an Africanist that identifies himself or herself with the rest of the African population all over the world. And Marcus Garvey was such a person. He not just focused on the Jamaicans. He focused on Africa.
Africans everywhere.
How he started. How he started was to cut up small piece of paper and handing them over to passers-by at the corner where he was standing. That's how he started. And this paper was written, "You are an African."
Yes, and I think we still need such pieces of paper today because there are still many of our people who are not in their right mind. And, this is why it was so important that we had our guests from South Africa, because many of us are aware of the extent to which social engineering and mind manipulation has been working on our South African brothers and sisters, to the extent where they don't see their own brothers who are born elsewhere on the continent as their brothers, and they don't see the Chinese or the Europeans or the Indians as foreigners, but they see themselves as foreigners. And this is the extent to which the brainwashing has got us, working against ourselves. Let's bring in Brother Ade and then Brother Akram. Rise up, Brother Ade. Thanks for waiting.
Are you okay, Bishop Tini?
I'm good. Okay? Thank you so much for asking. How are you doing, my brother?
Well, I'm good. I agree with everything Brother Kwame said. You see, you indoctrination and the mindset of, you see, we have to change the narrative. It's based on the individual, right? They say charity begins at home. We have to educate our children, condition our children in an African way. Don't rely on white people to do it for you. I do it all the time. Even to my brother's children, extended family, I do it all the time. You know, you have to correct the wrong, what the white teachers are teaching them in school. I'm going to give them the right information. It's all about information. As regarding South Africa, there's not a lot I could say, but the Kwame said everything. Nothing has changed there. The people call Nigeria, and I'm afraid it's heading for a major fall because there is a referendum coming next year. The president, because he's scared of losing the election, he's trying to ban Twitters. I don't know whether you come across that information. And he's going to do it because the cat has already been let out of the bag. We know the information about it, not just Nigeria, the whole of Africa, the leaders are corrupt. He's trying to ban without having the notice that Twitter, all these media companies are franchised. In Lagos, there's so many media companies, who are working for Google. There's nothing that no president could do to ban Google, Facebook, or whatever they are, because he's scared. He claimed that we already know the conspiracy. We already know what Buhari is all about. He's nothing but a stooge, just like the rest of them. And I'm afraid that when the referendum does take place next year, the power of the people is going to speak. We might not have a place called Nigeria no more.
Let's hope it's a peaceful transition and a peaceful process. This is the challenge that we have.
Hold on, it will be a peaceful one because this is what the people want. We're going back to what it was pre-Berlin, when our continent was carved up. Maybe we might find peace, prosperity, happiness, unity amongst that, rather than living under the narrative of Nigeria and everywhere else, which is created by white people. This is the first step. This is the first step we have to take. Dismantle all their names, places in South Africa, Bloemfontein. These are all Jewish, stroke Dutch, Bloemfontein, and all the other places.
That is definitely part of the solution. Renaming all of our streets, all of our places, all of our, places of historical value.
Sister Shanice, I'm talking of not having university. There's universities, because universities is where it's learned. Where people, especially I can speak for West Africa generally, Ghana, Nigeria, and everywhere else on the West Coast, there are universities there where they teach African people curriculum. Obviously, I don't expect that scenario to happen in Southern Africa. I don't expect that because the system is shop.
I hear you, my brother. We're still in our wrong mind, though, because I saw a snippet of a speech from Priti Patel, or Ugly Patel, from Parliament. And she was talking about launching a new intelligence unit that's going to be working with the Ghanaian immigration department at the airports there, supposedly to clamp down on illegal immigrants. But it's nothing more. And I'm like, how could, a supposedly independent country like Ghana, talk about welcoming in a team of no more than CIA, FBI, and other intelligence to work with immigration. It's to put a stop to the flight. Yes. Let me allow you to come in.
Sorry, brother, right? The government of Ghana.
All right, let me bring you in after Ade, brother Kwame. Right, yeah.
Look, the white men have always been using Indians to pit against Africans. This is what they do in East Africa. They brought them to build railways, and they control all the resources they do. We have to be very careful. Priti Patel is just a stooge. She's not a nice woman. She's not in it for black people.
That's right.
White men have always been using Indian people, the Indian people against black people. They've been doing this. They're doing it in Tanzania. They've done it all over the east coast of Africa, where they own all the. They were brought there to build railways, and they stayed there. And the fact is, African people are so narrow-minded, referring them to Africans. They should kick their backside out. Sorry to use the line. Kick them out. Let them go.
For real. That is the solution. That's what our revolutionary freedom fighters tried to do in the late 50s, early 60s. Kick them out. But, you know, they're using now psychological, social engineering, and they've captivated the minds of our people the way we think. They've indoctrinated us into believing that, you know, they are superior and we're inferior. They've indoctrinated, you know, this black self-hate, this African self-hate, and that's taken root in our communities all around the world. And as Franklin Jones often talks about, you know, it's one thing to win the war, but it's another thing to win, you know, the minds of the people. And they realized that they needed to win the minds of our people. And we're caught up now in this whirlwind where the vast majority of our people are out of their own mind, walking around like zombies with somebody else's mind in their heads and not realizing that they know nothing about themselves, their history, their culture, and who they are as individuals, and that they are being used to maintain the status quo to our own detriment. Let's bring in Brother Akram, and then we're going to go round the group for a final response from everybody. Brother Akram, rise up, my brother. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, rise up, my sister, and rise up to your guests from South Africa and to all the other contributors on the program.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You know, my brother,
sorry, Brother Kwame, I forgot I said I was going to bring you in. Brother Akram hasn't spoken, but I'll come to you after Brother Akram. Okay, please remind me after he's finished. Sorry, Brother Akram, please continue.
Yes, my brother, I mean, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, you know, we have, we're in a grave problem. I believe that we can solve this problem overnight by changing our mindset.
Absolutely.
Okay? Right? Overnight we can change it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? For our liberations and the solutions, my first take is developing our economic structure. You cannot do anything. That's the only thing that these people are beating us with. They're beating us because they have an abundance of money. We're dealing in hundreds and thousands. These people are dealing in millions and billions. And how do we catch up with that? We need to start pooling our resources so that we can catch up. A lot of us putting a little bit into a pool can soon reach millions and billions. But if we don't develop, if you go to Africa or you go to anywhere, in any community, ask the people, what are your needs? What are your needs? Right? First of all, they will tell you, I'd love to have a good home. I'd love to have clean drinking water. I'd love to have good education for my children. I'd love to have a job where I can meet these needs. Right? Are we working to fulfill these needs? What is our aim to meet these needs of the people? Right? What is our own aims to meet these needs of what those people are looking for? Right? Feeding their children. Right? Look, for me, right, religion and all these beliefs and other things are a separate issue. These are something that you're not going to change people's minds of what they believe or what they follow or all of these things, because we're very diverse in what we see as a goal to reaching what we call our salvation. Many people believe, I have to go this way to meet salvation. So I would leave that around. What we need to do is work on what is common. This is the main common thing that is common to all of us. They want a good home. They want clean water. They want good education. And they want the jobs or the business or whatever it is to meet those needs of taking care of their children and their home. Right? And the only way we're going to do that is to develop a strong economic structure. Right? That's why they build their own banks. That's why they build their fund management. And they put money in it. And we put money in it. And they take those money that we put into their fund management and their banks and come back and beat us with it. That's what they did in America. They set up these things, and they put their money into those things. And what they do, they didn't give it back to the black man to build up himself. They give it to their own white people to build up themselves. This is what we need to be focusing on. Our solution to how we are going to rid our poverty by giving our people good homes, giving them good clean water, giving them good education, and develop jobs where they can meet these needs.
Wow. Brother Akram, thank you so much, as always, for your interjection there. I mean, based on what you've said, that's a whole new, that's a show in itself. You know, that's a show in itself. It really, really is, because, you know, on the one hand, hear what you're saying in terms of the need for us to change our mindset, and then, you know, and how our position could be changed overnight if we were to do so, and that we need to work together economically. But even if we work together economically and we start putting our money in their banks. You ended up by saying that they use that same money that we put in their banks, you know, to give to their own people so that their own people can have that advantage over us. You know, we've got to come out of their system altogether. You know, for as long as we continue to bank in their banks, get educated in their schools, abide by their laws, and jump to their tune, you know, we are going to be controlled by them, because they will maintain all the systems of control. They control the economies, and we are within their economic system. And if we start pooling together hundreds of thousands, they'll just print more bits of paper, so they're dealing in millions and trillions. I don't think we can ever beat them at their own game. But let me bring in, I'm going to bring you in a short while, Brother Jeff, but first of all, and then we've got to go back to our guests. I'm going to allow everybody to make some comments, and then I'm going to bring our guest in at 45 minutes so that he can have the last 10-15 minutes to comment. Yeah. So, Brother Kwame, over to you first. You've got about 2-3 minutes.
Right. So, firstly, just think about Ghana. Ghana is what Kwame Nkrumah said, a neo-colonial government. Mm-hmm. And the government that we have right now in Ghana is Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, whose ancestors were the ones who were against Kwame Nkrumah, and those who worked with the CIA to overthrow Kwame Nkrumah in 1966. So you have the descendants of those who are opposed to Nkrumah and Ghana's development. Solution for us is like we need to Africanize our minds. That can only come by owning and managing our systems of information that we give to our people, particularly our young children. We need to Africanize, have an Africanized school system, Africanized minds of our people. And lastly on this, particularly in the diaspora or the UKK rather, it's not enough. Saturday schools is not enough. We've had Saturday schools since the pioneers came here in the 40s and 50s. We should have took it scaled up by now by having 24/7 black-only independent schools. It's a shame that those schools, that's in particular in London, do not come together and unite, because we know that a lot of them are struggling to pay their rent. I don't understand why they come together and unite and form one black school of excellence in the London area, because that is the only way forward for our people in the UK, not to think that by this assimilation and multiculturalism, that's going to be the answer to our problems. Give thanks.
Give thanks, Brother Kwame. Rise up, rise up. Let's go over to Brother Jeff. Brother Jeff?
Yeah. Rise up, sis. I'll keep it short, sis. Rise up, all the callers. I'll keep it short. I've heard talking about education. Sis, that won't be enough. I'll tell you why. Because at the rate, I'm always going on about this because it's we're in a very precarious position. I'm sure that our brother from Tanzania can confirm what I'm about to say now. I said, well, the only solution is the people that have got sense, the 1%, have to come together and build our Black Doha, our Black Business Project, our Black Garment Towns, because a lot of people see it as an example of physical excellence that will change them. Because where we're going now, education is not enough. Well, ask us, the Chinese are having probes on Mars. They built artificial suns right now in 2021. Now, sis, let me make some sobering question to all our people, listeners. If they do it now in 2021, how far faster could be in 6 decades time? You see, so if we're going to change that, get a land back, when they become triple their population by 3.5 billion, right now they're 1.3 billion. And end of the decade, they're probably 3 billion, maybe 3.5. When they're on Africa, which they would, at the rate they're buying it, when they get the technology, if you talk about Star Trek, Star Wars, how are we going to fight them? If we ever get too far advanced, how do we get their land back? When they've got that population and that advanced technology. No, we've got to start doing now our garment towns as enclave, then start now. We've got to educate the rest. The rest is, if they're not educated now, they never change. 1% that got a sense must come together and build our Garvey towns, build our black Dohas, and then that will become a catalyst in the 99% who are asleep, who are comatose. That's my perception.
Rise up,
4 or 5 decades, it'll be too late. Their own child, their old Africa, like ones choosing their feet. They'll be tenants of their own land. Sis, I'll tell them to be harsh, but I have to be clear. We have to be face the truth. No matter how I'm pleasant, we have to face the truth. It won't happen, but at the rate they're going, it will. I'm not saying it will happen, because that'll be negative, but at the rate they're going, if we don't start coming together, 1% that makes sense, build our Garvey towns, build our black Dohas, build our black Dubais, build some example of black excellence, they're not going to change. Education's not enough. They want to see examples of power, not rhetoric.
Rise up, Brother Jeff, as always, another powerful contribution. So it's basically abandon the job of trying to change the mindset of the 100%. The 1% that's got to be the spark has got to now come together, building those centres of excellences, the Black Wall Streets and the Garvey towns and the like, the Black Dubai, the African Dubai, and the other 99% will jump on board and follow. And therein, they will come into our Africated system that Brother Kwame was talking about, that's absolutely needed to Africanize the mind of the people. But, some of us have got to go away and do the building. Oh, I hear that. I like that. Let's go over to Brother Geb. Brother Geb. Some powerful solutions coming forward. Hotep.
So my solutions are no different than the rest of the contributors. So, I think we first need to start with the premise that the European system is working perfectly for them.
Yes.
Right? So it's working perfectly for them. It's working to its design. It hasn't faltered from its design. It's not missed a beat from its design. And it's doing exactly what it was designed to do. Mm-hmm. Now, bringing it back to us, I popped into this conversation because I heard us talking about the key, which is our mental state, our mental health. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to, remind everybody that what we suffer from is post-traumatic slave syndrome, and that we are still in a state of psychosis. Psychosis meaning a break from reality. Mm-hmm. So there's 2 psychotic disorders. One, we talk about delusions, and the other, we talk about hallucinations. We have no issues with hallucinations. A psychotic disorder is when we lose control, or our thinking becomes abnormal thinking. Our perceptions are not real. People with psychosis lose touch with reality, and the 2 main symptoms are delusions and hallucinations. Well, Africans have lost touch with their reality. And the only way we're going to get our reality back is through our Africation. Mm-hmm. That's the only way, sis, brothers. Now, once we get that, because to brother's point, Africation is not the means or the end to the means or the means to the end. Once we become Africated, then we must become liberated. Mm-hmm. And at that point, we're going to have some choices. We are either going to war, or we are going to completely dissolve our relationship with the beast. One of the 2. Mm-hmm. One or the other. We go to war, or we dissolve our relationship with the beast. And so I'm going to land on that.
Another powerful contribution there. Rise up, Brother Geb. Wow. Once the 100%. Oh, yes, you're next, Brother Rasoshing. And the Prophet has joined us late. Oh, and you know how he likes to, drop it as well. And I've got to allow time for our guests to come back. So, yes, come in, Brother Rasoshing.
As what Brother Geb said is correct, and what I'm saying, many of our academia has been reading the enslaved story, You cannot read the enslaver's story to find out the full glory of Mother Africa. You know, and that is why, my sister, we are now working it in. We've said to you, the Ishmaelites and the Israelites created a new interpretation of economical revelation. And we see how they've used it. So when we speak of Mother Africa, we must remember, it's not just one nation that has been on top of us. All of Europe came together, and so did Asia, the Persians, the Arabians, and Egypt. And that is what we've been confronted with. That is why it's taken us so long.
Yes.
And
it's Africa against the world.
This COVID-19 has been a blessing, because what I've seen happening, not only we in the Caribbean, remember, the Rasta man worked it out from when His Majesty was crowned King of Kings, Lords of all the Congo. Many of our people started to return. They went and fought in the war against Mussolini. And when the OAU was formed, the Organization of African Unity, and now that we have the recognition of the sixth region, which again came as a result of the Rastaman work of how to define the sixth region. So we are now working it in, and what I'm saying to my brother,
and we've got to leave it there, my brother.
Our brother in South Africa.
Absolutely got to leave it there. Just your last sentence, please.
Yes.
A short
2030. 2030. Africa must be free.
Rise
and that's
up.
what the elders say. Whatever separates us, let us concentrate on what is common amongst us. And when we are in Africa united, then we can go over the differences. But right now, it must be now, my sister. We can't wait no longer.
Can't wait no longer. By 2030, Africa must be free. Ashe, ashe, ashe. Let me bring in our prophet just for 2 minutes, and then we must allow our guests time to respond to all of the suggestions for solutions. Prophet!
Yes, Hotep, my queen.
Hotep.
Greetings here, Christian force at the Universe of Niftem, that which greater now, several many holy Maro Kuluku, Kwambla, She Mungu, Niemi, Amen Ra, Ja, Amen Ra, She. Yeah, sis, very quickly, I've been in and out of the show because I've had some issues today. But somebody mentioned Garvey Town and billing Garvey Town. And Brother Kwame also mentioned about the Saturday schools come together. These things are in process. We have the annual African culture, Pan-Africanist African Cultural Sports Day this year. We've been doing it for the last 4 years. This is an attempt for us to come together as Saturday schools to see if we can work together in order to bring forth our prime objective, a full-time school. You understand me? So that is in the process. Garvey Town is there. And if anybody is interested in Garvey Town, just get my details from Galaxy or give it to you, or you can go to our website, garveytown.net. You see our website, etc. Yeah, and come and see me. We've had some issues. We've had some infiltration. Agents has been sent. People that look like us to destroy whatever, but the land is there. If people want to come and help develop it, it is there. That's all I have to say. I'm not into the long talk with people. We've been fighting for many years. Stop the selfish behavior. Stop thinking about just you. Think about collective working together. That's what Garvey talks about. And I'll leave it at that.
Rise up, rise up. Thank you so much. Can I just check, is there anyone on the line who has yet to speak? Because I know sometimes the callers kind of disappear. Is there anyone on the line who has yet to speak? Okay, wonderful. Let me go back to our guests. Sorry, was somebody just going to speak?
Can I just finish one last thing?
One last thing. Must be very brief, my brother, to give our guests time.
Less than a minute, yeah. And as I said, my take is, right, and I just want to point out, there's a company in Tanzania. The man started off in 1975. He now boasts over $800 million. He's now building his own town. And he employs over 8,000 people, right? This is what I'm talking about, economics. That's what we need to be focusing on, how we can develop our economic structure. Without money, without that economic structure, our people is going to be in poverty, and they, that's all they're looking for. That's why most of our families leave.
Where the mindset of most of our people is at. We hear you on that, my brother, and because that is the conditioning that we've had. That the most important thing is in life is to work until we retire and live life. We know the European conditioning, and that's where the mindset is at. Send your children to a good school, have good food to eat. Doesn't matter who's in power. Doesn't matter, that the Europeans are even running the world. As long as we've got food on the table, our children get educated, and we've got a job, then it's all right. Is it really all right? That's why I said this is a separate conversation for another time. We are the ones who have got to be ruling. We are the ones who've got to be in control. We need to take back our land. We need to take back our continent, and we need to, as well as take back our mind and our economies. Agree on the economic side, but there's a whole lot that underpins it that we've got to deal with as well. So let me go over to our guest, otherwise he's not going to have any time to respond. Our dear brother, we're going to have to invite you back again, Brother Ngila. Please come in.
Yes, okay, thank you very much. And there's so much richness in the narratives that we have been listening to right now. And these are the things that we have been dealing with in the liberation struggle forever. And like I tell you, I've been 60 years in the struggle, and these are the issues that we have been dealing with. And it's all very well to set up time frames or timelines. Because when we joined, in 1960, for instance, we were saying that we were going to be liberated in 1963, and it never happened. And I found out later why it is that in spite of belonging to a political movement or to a political party, you are slowed down somehow. And I wanted to find out what it is that slows us down. We've got the ideology, the Africanist ideology, the Pan-Africanist ideology. Some of us were Marxists and stuff like that. Yet, we were not moving apace. So I discovered that, first of all, what you need to have as an individual that is working within a group or a race or a nation is consciousness. I spoke about conditioning earlier on, and conditioning puts you in a room, in a four-cornered, in a four-walled room of thinking where you don't see anything beyond the walls of your conditioning. But consciousness gives you the ability to see not only what is in that conditioning room, but also what is outside the conditioning room. So this is what we need to have. That's where you must start. I mean, everything has got a process. And once you have that, then you must realize and recognize that you need to have a sense of identity. Who are you, number one, as simply a human being, your father's daughter or your father's son? Who are you as that human being? And then from there, who are you in terms of race, in terms of nationality and stuff like that? And once we don't have that consciousness, then we don't know how we are going to go forward, because going forward, you need unity among the people within the group, whether it is a nation or a race. You need that unity, but it starts with consciousness of self, and then that leads you to self-knowledge, and self-knowledge leads you therefore to working with other people and knowing what your needs are. I like the theme of needs, but what is going to satisfy needs is something concrete, something that you can define and describe. But how do you define and describe without the mind? So everything from consciousness upwards, the mind is primary. The mind is overarching. Let us not minimize the importance of the mind, because everything that you do or you have to do, the mind must be there. It starts in the mind. When a carpenter makes a chair, that chair already exists in the mind. Mm-hmm. So to produce that chair, it must be in the mind first. Mm-hmm. So we must have that consciousness, therefore, of what we have to create and whether we've got the ability to do it. And if we don't have that ability at a certain point in time, then we must find out where that ability is, because the Almighty, whichever way you conceive him of being, has put in us, or nature if you choose, has put in us a potential, a power. We've got that power, which is called potential. And all we need to do is to is to tap into that power. It's there in every individual. Instead of complaining and blaming only and criticizing and stuff like that, look into yourself and find out whether you are using that power. Do you have the consciousness? Are you conscious? And do you have the self-knowledge that is there? And I love this post-traumatic state. The traumatic state is an attempt to get out of the conditioning, but you are blocked by the same conditioning to jump out of the conditioning room. So that also needs consciousness, a state of consciousness which must be raised. And what do how do you use that? By giving people information. And giving people information is called education. Mm-hmm. It's as simple as that. So give information that is appropriate, that is linked to what you want. Think with the end in mind. Well, what end do I want to achieve? Or this is the end. So what foundation do I have to build? And that foundation is the consciousness of self and consciousness of identity and consciousness of the people that you identify with. And then realize your potential. And once you know your potential, then you can stand up and do it with other people. You can initiate as an individual, but you cannot complete what you have initiated without other people. That is why unity is very, very important. Mm-hmm. But unity starts with self first, and know what your role is, what your responsibilities are for the group. We can criticize one another and our leaders and so forth. Where do our leaders come from? They come from us.
That's right.
So they think like us.
My brother, we're going to have to...
We're
going to have to invite you back. We are almost at the top of the show now, but we must invite you back so that we can start our conversation on the level of consciousness. You know, what are the essential teaching points, the essential education? What are the essential kind of information that we need to be? Yeah, and please tell us how we can get our. Please tell us how we can get your book as well. Your book.
Yes. Yeah, let me give you my email address. Mm-hmm. It's Mike at Soul Talk. Mike, Mike, at Soul Talk. Soul as in spirit and talk as in speak. soultalk.co.za. There I will tell you even more about the club, the digital club that I've created, which does exactly what we have been talking about here, liberating the African mind. And it is called Soul Talk.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. You know, as vast as we think the challenge is, let's just remind ourselves that if Marcus Messiah Garvey could raise the level of consciousness of millions, I think it was about 22 million people he had in his organization way back in the day. If he can achieve that back then, you know, we certainly can and must work towards achieving the same level of of consciousness raising today with all of the technological advances that we have. So, my brother, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on the Big G Galaxy Afiwi and for sharing your works. I just want to, congratulate you and applaud you and salute you for the works that you have been ceaselessly doing for over 60 years towards the liberation of our people, physically and now mentally. And, you was talking about like-minded people coming together. You've met a body of people here at the Big G Galaxy Afiwi who are, part of the sparks that you've talked about. And we're coming together, my brother, in unity so that we can be that fireball that's going to re-energize the minds of our people and raise a level of consciousness like our forefathers did back in the time. I've only got time now to thank all of the callers, the management and everybody. Got to play my track, and please keep it locked here to the Big G. We've got Brother Iconic, and I think Brother Prophet is going to be a guest on his show as well, and they're going to be delving into our history, which is another very important arm of raising our consciousness, or being on the same page in terms of our African history. Rise up, family. Keep it locked to the Big G Galaxy Afiwi, the only de-brainwashing station.